Hello, Steve White, Steve White C9. Well, I just did a little bit of a review of Transformers, the movie, and sort of my sort of experience watching it as a child, talking about the different versions, the video version, the early DVD versions, the new extended widescreen, full frame Blu-ray versions and so forth, and comparing them. And then I sort of went over the film kind of briefly, and I just sort of wanted to talk about sort of the aftermath of the film, because there's a lot of videos on the trauma that the film caused children at the time, and I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, I sort of saw it, fortunately, after I knew that Optimus Prime came back and so forth, because a lot of kids saw it in the summer in between Transformers Season 2 and Season 3, and it was fairly disturbing to them. You learn later on in the first season of Transformers, and the fourth season as well, that Optimus comes back, and that he becomes a leader again, and we had future toys, the Power Master toys, the Action Master toys, and of course Generation 2 as well. And then you go into some of the other Transformers series like Victory and Headmasters and Power Masters, and it wasn't the end for Optimus, but kids didn't know that at the time. And when you look at why they did that, apparently it just came down to toys. It's like, well, we want to launch a new sort of toy line. We've sort of abandoned the old Diaclone versions and the licensed cars and the sort of quaint sort of original version of Transformers, which is very charming, where real life cars and objects would turn into robots. And they went totally sci-fi in the third season, and they just decided that they were just going to kill off all the old characters, introduce new characters, and lead people into the third season of the show. Sort of like a sort of soft reboot, and make it more of a science fiction sort of show, rather than just like a action show, which mostly took part on Earth. There were only a couple of episodes in the first season and the second season where they actually left Earth or dealt with aliens or different civilizations on Earth, which they did actually explore as well. But yeah, it's kind of funny. It's like the idea that they killed off these characters, and it's really, the way it was done was callous. Now, the film goes for an hour and 24 minutes. Had they just pushed it to an hour and 29, hour 30 minutes, and given us 4 minutes just of time with the original Autobots before the battle, and actually maybe just a couple of minutes, and then showed a couple of minutes of them actually fighting it and dying. But you have that one scene on the ship where Prowl, Brawn, and Ratchet are killed, Ironhide are killed. You get that scene, and then that's pretty much it. That's sort of your message that we're wiping out the old characters. And then we have this battle, which we see some of, but then we see this transition from day to night, and they're still fighting, and the battle sort of wound down, and everyone's sort of killed, but you don't see that. So if we'd had a couple of minutes showing the Autobots all sort of fighting and being taken down one at a time to know, oh yes, they did die. We had a shot of Wheeljack and I think Windcharger, was it? Windraid? I can't remember his name. Basically their bodies being moved by RC, and that's it. And everything else is just, we just assume they're all gone, and we just suddenly are left with these new characters who are all very modern Cybertronian science fiction sort of vehicles, and slightly more realistic toy versions of the robots, where they sort of preference the robots to the vehicle forms. I think with the later 1986, the sort of third year of the Transformers line, and they didn't do as well. And that's, I think, because they abandoned the actual licensed realistic cars, and it was hard to relate to, oh, it's a robot that turns into what is this? Is that a sled? Is that a space hovercraft? I mean, what? It just became a bit of a kiddie sci-fi mess on some levels. And then they didn't seem to understand why that wasn't connecting, and so their reaction was, well, we need new and interesting things. They're bored with the old concept, which was abandoned, not, we didn't get bored with it. And as you saw when the Michael Bay movies came out, then we returned to licensed realistic cars with interesting transformations, and they sold really well and still do. So yeah, they created like Headmasters, Target Masters, Power Masters, Action Masters, all these Micro Masters, all these things, desperately trying to create these new things that interest people when they're just getting further and further away from the original concept. And that's basically what it came down to with the movie. It's like, well, we're just going to kill off the old characters so we can introduce new characters. And people who, of course, were attached to these characters, who went to the film to see these characters, were kind of like either at best disappointed, at most traumatized by it, they're being killed and wiped out. Now, some of them did come back. Optimus did come back in the series, season 3, and so forth. But yeah, it's really strange to sort of to watch it knowing that was their intention and that was what they were sort of doing. But yeah, I just want to talk about that for a minute because I sort of found it interesting in relation to criticism of the show being just, to sell toys and so forth. There were elements of that did affect the story and so forth, whereas the individual sort of storytellers and that who were creating the show were trying to tell a real story in a real action series for kids. So it's a bit of conflict there, and Transformers, the movie, was where that conflict sort of was fought out and kind of lost.